Now, earlier today, the New York Times published a report about how former President Donald Trump was attempting to seize voting machines as part of the effort to steal the 2020 election. Now, according to the report, which follows on an earlier report about a draft executive order that Trump's lawyers had attempted to hide after the fact. So now, that draft order would have directed the defense secretary to go around to each of the battleground states and seize voting machines. Now, let's just say right now that that would have been an absolute and utter disaster. So now, first, details. The New York Times, citing 3 people familiar with the matter, reported on Monday that Trump had directed Rudy Giuliani to call the Department of Homeland Security to determine whether or not it could legally take control of voting machines in key states. Now, obviously, you can't. That is not legal. Now, that effort also came amid 2 previously reported attempts, as I mentioned, to seize machines. Trump's outside advisors pressing to have the Defense Department confiscate them, and Trump asking Attorney General William Barr whether the Justice Department could take them. Barr immediately rejected the suggestion, the Times said. Trump's advisors drafted a second version of the executive order, ordering DHS to take control of the voting equipment, according to the Times and CNN. The new account showed that Mr. Trump was more directly involved than previously known in exploring proposals to use national security agencies to seize voting machines, as he grasped unsuccessfully for evidence of fraud that would help him reverse his defeat in the 2020 election, according to people familiar with the episodes. Now, understand how much of a huge overreach that is. That's a literal takeover of of state election. That's what that is. A huge overreach. Power grab. Now, I thought conservatives were supposed to be wary about that stuff. I thought they're like, the federal government coming in and taking control of our elections. No, not over our dead bodies. We're patriots. Well, in this case, the federal government does not oversee elections. It doesn't. Voting machines and most other aspects of U.S. elections are overseen by state and local officials. That's how that works, okay? Now, in the case of the federal government, they do get involved in certain instances, like civil rights concerns, or violence, or campaign finance law, which theoretically they're supposed to do something about, but they generally don't. So, if the federal government were to come in and steal voting machines, literally take them, well, that would have been a gigantic and incredible amount of federal overreach. The jackbooted thugs, they're coming. They're rolling into polling places like Philadelphia and Atlanta. They're confiscating the machines. Now, you think that would have went over well? Do you think that would have happened? No. Wouldn't have caused some sort of conflict? No, would have, absolutely. And look, I think it would have been a firestorm. You would have had federal agents arguing with local officials, Republican officials even. Now, maybe that's what he was hoping for. I don't know. Maybe it was the whole thing, like, I don't know, a distraction. Just give me a distraction so I have some time, right, to figure out how I'm going to try to steal this election. I don't know, but it's pretty scary to think about the implications of how close we actually came to this level of disaster. Oh, and of course, to think that, like, we were that close to fascist takeover, but didn't go in that direction because of Mike Pence and William Barr. Oof. Oh, that hurts. But again, it's hard to think about. And it's even worse knowing that there were a lot of people who were willing to go along with this. Now, this is actually also related to one of the previous stories that I talked about, and that was the I mean, that was all the records that he ripped apart involving January 6th, and of course, leaving his aides and people who are trying to keep the records according to the law, and had to go and tape them back up. And no wonder he tried to rip up that documentation. I think he was hiding his tracks. I mean, that's my personal opinion. And doing so to try to cling to power in any way he could. And again, through that, we realize that he has had no problems trying to subvert our entire form of government to try to hold on to power. He's an authoritarian, and thank goodness we survived that. But how close? How close were we to the edge? I see we're pretty close. Pretty close. Giving the ignorance, by the way, of the role of the vice president in certification, the propaganda machine of the far right, and the willingness of that same far right to do violence, as well as the inherent distrust in institutions. And I'm not saying that those institutions haven't failed us and haven't earned some of that or a lot of that distrust, especially media. Nonetheless, it just shows you how close we've gotten. And not only that, but we're not even anywhere, there's been no changes to anything. We're back to the status quo, and the status quo is what got us to where we were with Trump in the first place. We're nowhere near out of the woods. We're nowhere near out of the woods. And again, I'm not just talking about Donald Trump running in 2024. Yes, that's going to happen. But it's more than that. It's not only, it's the support that he gets. We have a third of all Republicans that say violence might be necessary to save the republic. But it's not just the base, it's also in Congress. And it's the lack of any changes. And not only that, but the lack of any consequences for the people who supported him. Even the rioters, whom he had just promised to pardon if he gets elected. So, obviously, the republic is still in danger. That danger has not passed. It is still very, very present. We need to wake up and actually make some positive changes to the system in order to not only protect and promote democracy in our own country, but prevent fascist takeover.